Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, this is another essay about the crumbling Western justice system, and this one focusing on climate change activists. Now, I've been following the careers of some climate change activists who seem to be remarkably well funded. So NGOs are pouring money into their pockets, and they've got a sort of hardcore of professional stirrers and agitators. They move them around to anywhere in the world they need them, and anywhere in the country they need them, and so on. So they're being, they're not working, these people. So obviously they're being paid, and they're being given money to eat and travel around and so on. How they're able to which NGOs. The NGOs seem to rotate a little bit, so there's not just one NGO. NGOs seem to bounce around little bits, maybe making it harder for folks to find the money trail or something. I don't know, but anyway, the climate change protest movement, a bit like BLM or not, bit like like BLM and Antifa, is centrally coordinated, organised, very well funded, and has a core of professional agitators that are doing the trouble. And as we've sort of seen in the United States, even law enforcement authorities such as the FBI are acting as agents provocateurs, and thus working alongside and with BLM and Antifa in achieving the globalist objectives. Now, climate change is a key globalist objective. I mean, they gag over the very thought of it. It's there to divide Western communities. It's there to add taxes, and it's there to enrich a small select few that are at the apex of this climate scam. But just looking at following the careers of these people, they just don't get, if they do get arrested, they're told lawfully to move on by the police, and they refuse to. So they're arrested for causing a public disturbance, causing a public affray, resisting arrest, refusing to accept a lawful direction from an officer of the law, and those sorts of things. But when it gets to court, some judges, not all, but some judges are openly saying, you are working on it with a wonderful cause, you are doing the right thing, what you're doing is good. Just so happens it's against the law, but hey, I'm a judge, I don't care about that, so you can go free. And sometimes they're not even having to pay the court costs. I mean, it's insane. And so some are walking straight out the door of the courtroom door and straight back into another protest, and thumbing their nose at the police and the law enforcement authorities generally. So this is something's happening again around the world, whether it be in Britain or Australia, United States, and so on, Canada. Now, in Britain, just a couple of days ago, some climate change protesters were actually arrested and put in prison. But there's a material point here to understand. It wasn't for the protests they were doing. It was for contempt of court. So they were told, last time they were in court, they were told, look, don't do this again, and they did it. So even then, the judge cut them some slack and said, well, look, while you're in court, you have to promise me right here and now in court that you won't do it again. And they refused to promise that they wouldn't do it again. And some of them even said that they would do it again, and said nothing can stop them. They're on a mission from God, and they're going to do it regardless of the law and what the police say and what the courts say. And this is now the judge. When you talk that way to the judge sort of had no choice. So the judge had to say, well, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to have to lock you up for contempt of court, which is quite a serious thing. But it's used technically and strategically by various, or the divorce courts, for example, use contempt of court widely in order to go after men and to go after men and get them for, say, falling behind in alimony or something like that. So anyway, these I think it was 5 of them got I think 3 and 4 months, and then the ringleader or the main agitator got 6 months in prison. But again, it was for contempt. Now, the judge could very easily have put them in prison for repeated violations of the law for protesting, but for some reason didn't want to do that. And as I did a quick look around, I've noticed that the people who, from the climate protesters, I couldn't, at a first pass, I couldn't find any that were actually arrested and put in prison, charged and put in prison for the protest, the climate change protest itself, gluing themselves to the road, blocking roadways and blocking entrances to hospitals, things like that. And I couldn't find any of them. I assume there must be some somewhere. But what I did notice was that wherever they have been put in prison, it's been for contempt of court. So there's not the precedent being set here that climate change protesters can be put in prison for their protesting and the disruption it causes, and again, their refusal to accept lawful directions from the police and so on. Now, I don't know I do know why the courts are so reluctant. The courts don't want to have precedent against these climate change protesters, these activists. Now, if it was activism for, we don't want more illiterate third world immigrants coming into the country, then the court would have no hesitation in putting those people in prison. But because that's against the globalist project. But the globalists want the climate change issue to be as controversial and as divisive as possible, and given that they control the government and most of the legal infrastructure, then the courts are very reluctant to put them in prison for climate change activism. You've been with Tassos today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.